You know that feeling when you stare at a shelf of desktop computers and wonder if you're about to waste a good chunk of money on something that'll sit there half-used? I've been there more times than I'd like to admit, especially when I need a machine that can handle work emails, a few Zoom calls, and the occasional spreadsheet crunch without turning into a paperweight. That uncertainty is what drives most of us to dig deeper, read a handful of reviews, and still end up wondering, is this really the right fit for me? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The HP Pavilion 2026 edition tries to hit that sweet spot between business-grade reliability and home office convenience. At first glance it looks like a typical mid-tower with a clean, professional aesthetic, but the real question is how it behaves once you plug it in and start using it for the day-to-day stuff we actually care about. I've spent the last week setting it up as a primary workstation for my freelance writing business, and I've also taken it for a spin in a small family office where it's shared between a couple of remote working parents and a teenage student who's doing school projects. Let's start with the things that matter most when you're deciding whether to put this machine on the desk. The heart of this Pavilion is an 8-core Intel i7-11700F. In everyday terms that translates to snappy application launches, smooth multitasking, and the ability to keep a handful of browser tabs, Office apps, and a light photo editing program open without the dreaded not responding moments. On my setup I routinely have 2 Word documents, a large Excel file, a web browser with about 12 tabs, and Photoshop's basic editing window open. Boot time is under 10 seconds thanks to the 512GB PCIe SSD, and file transfers feel instant compared to older mechanical drives I've used. One practical strength that stands out is the Wi-Fi 6AX201 module. In a house where the router is tucked away in the hallway and the desktop sits a few rooms away, the connection stays stable even when the kids are streaming video in another room. I've measured a consistent 200+ megabit download speed during a video conference, and the Bluetooth 5.0 pairing for my wireless headset has been rock solid, no dropouts mid-call. Now, graphics. The Pavilion ships with a GeForce GT 610 2GB card. That's not a gaming GPU, but it's a dedicated graphics solution that outperforms the basic integrated graphics you'd find on a comparable Intel chip. For tasks like rendering a PowerPoint slide with a few embedded videos, or doing light photo adjustments in Lightroom, it's more than enough. However, if you plan on editing 4K video footage, running the latest 3D design software, or playing modern titles at anything beyond low settings, you'll feel the limitation quickly. The GT610 will handle Office-centric video playback and simple 2D design work, but it isn't built for heavy visual workloads. Storage is another area where the Pavilion delivers real-world value. The 512GB SSD gives you a generous amount of space for the operating system, applications, and a decent library of documents and media. In my experience, after installing Windows 11 Home, Office, a couple of Adobe apps, and a few games for occasional breaks, I still have over 250GB free. The drive's NVMe interface means those loading screens you're used to seeing on older machines are practically gone. Connectivity is fairly modern. There's a USB-C port that supports data and video output, a couple of USB-A ports for legacy peripherals, HDMI for an external monitor, and a headphone mic combo jack. If you're used to a desktop with a dozen ports, you might need a small hub, but for most home office setups the provided options cover a monitor, a keyboard mouse, and a webcam without extra adapters. So who should actually consider buying this HP Pavilion? If you're a small business owner or freelancer who needs a reliable, no-frills workstation that can juggle Office apps, email, and occasional light media work, this model hits the mark. The fast SSD and solid CPU mean you won't waste time waiting for programs to load, and the Wi-Fi 6 capability future-proofs your connection for the next few years. Families that share a single PC for remote schooling, budgeting, and casual content consumption will also find the Pavilion's performance more than adequate, especially because the dedicated graphics card prevents the system from throttling under modest visual loads. On the flip side, there are clear reasons to walk away. If you're an avid gamer looking to run titles like Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring at respectable frame rates, the GT610 simply won't cut it. You'd be better off looking at a system with a newer RTX card. Likewise, professionals who do intensive video editing, 3D rendering, or machine learning work will likely need a more powerful GPU and possibly more RAM than the 16 GB that comes standard. While the Pavilion does allow for upgrades, you'd be spending extra on a new graphics card and maybe a larger SSD, which narrows the price advantage that initially made it appealing. There are a